My name is Jacob Perlmutter, and this is Real Opinions. Hi, I'm Jacob Perlmutter. I'm a writer and director, and I'm based in London.
So how long have you been active in the industry?
Active in the industry properly. The thing is, every day I feel like I'm stepping into it for the first time. I've been making, short films and lots of commercial work and various things over the years. But my background has been as a multimedia artist. I started life as a photographer, and then became a musician for a while, and all the while was making films. So it's ambiguous, but I started taking things seriously from the age of 19 when I started at film school.
Excellent. And how did you end up doing what you do?
How did I end up doing what I do? I think I quite blindly just walked into it, in the sense that ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a filmmaker. It was a filmmaker or a marine biologist, and my science was awful. So by process of elimination, I had to choose this, and I just started doing it. I started working as a photographer when I was 14, shooting bands, and then the BBC made a hilarious piece on me as a teen, and the NME gave me a job, and I started shooting bands and going on tours and working festivals and things like that. And then from there started making music videos, and it was a natural progression. And I just loved working with the music videos that I made were never really kind of proper music videos in a kind of more arty sense. I was more interested in the narrative form of them, and from there I suppose I just have always been into film, and it just made sense to start kind of foraying more into writing and starting to make short films. And then at film school was when I really sunk my teeth into kind of writing and directing drama. So I suppose it was at film school when we had to choose a specialism, and I felt like writing and directing was the area that I was interested in, and I love collaboration and just kind of working with different people in different ways just kind of felt right. So I just followed my instinct.
Nice. And are any of the bands that you photographed early days still around?
I think I ended all of their careers. Yeah, I mean, I was closer with certain bands who aren't, but I shot some portraits of some fun people who are still going. Yeah, I mean, back in the day, I don't know, I shot portraits of Pete Docherty and Florence and the Machine, and Laura Marlin, and it was that whole wave.
Yeah, that was an interesting time for music.
Yeah.
Seemed like there was obviously you get peaks and troughs of genres and types of music, but I kind of felt like that period of time, because I would have been at university that time, that it was like new music but from across the whole landscape. Everyone was different. It was a different type of music, and that's when gigs used to be a lot cheaper than they are now to go to.
Yeah.
So is there a place or a location that you've always wanted to make a film?
So many. I mean, I'm jealous of Wes Anderson's kind of country bingo that he seems to be playing. I wrote a spec script that I set in Colombia, and I have spent some time there, and I loved it, and it's just an amazing place. And yes, that would be wonderful one day.
Don't rule it out. It's always there.
Yes, it is.
What other role in the industry do you have utmost respect for?
I mean, editing, because it's really, like the like Scorsese says, you write a film 3 times: when you write it, when you shoot it, when you edit it. And editing is the most kind of akin to writing or directing, in the sense that you are you're reimagining the story, but with the kind of these found objects that are the footage, you know. And what I love about a great editor is that they really are able to understand the plasticity of the material. There is so much potential in the material that can be diced up and kind of reimagined, that as it wasn't originally intended when it was written on the page. Because sure, you know, a script is a great blueprint, but what you end up shooting can be so different. And so the skill of a great editor who can absorb the intention of the story and interpret the reality of the material and create a new piece that, given the actual material that exists, can kind of create the best thing possible, is just magic to me.
Tell us about one of your favorite festival experiences.
We went to BuSho festival in Budapest and had a great unexpected day out at the baths. So that was fun. That was kind of you know, it was like part of the festival experience, and I just thought it was just wild, and just, it was beautiful. It was great.
We bumped into an old friend who I think had been a juror for BuSho, and he said exactly the same thing. He was like, the experience you get there is just, it's so particular to that festival. He was just raving about how beautiful the place was, but also the venues and the whole festival team. And he had also mentioned about the baths as well.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so left of field and just brilliant. And everyone there is it's lovely. It's lovely. I would implore anyone to submit a film just to go and have that experience. It's great.
Great. And what's the best piece of advice you've been given?
The best piece of advice that I have been given is to really live the project that you are working on. Worry only about, or focus on only, the project that is existing, and to treat it with kind of fullness and respect, and not think about the bigger picture. Don't worry about this kind of, what is your identity as an artist or a filmmaker or whatever, that seems to kind of plague so many people's minds when you're starting out and you're like up against these filmmaking gods, thinking, what is my voice and where do I fit in? The great piece of advice was just make the best piece of work that you can at that time, and when it's done, you can move on. And it's, many creative people I know sort of share similar worries in terms of like, where does this fit into, you know, where I've been and where I'm going, and kind of over pontification of one's oeuvre. And I think it's so important to just focus on the work, and also in a kind of stoic sense. You never know when life might end, and I am such a believer in just kind of approaching each project in the least morbid and most open-armed way possible, as if it might be your last, and to just love it and do it, and when it's done, then you can worry about the next thing.
What makes you get up in the morning?
My 3-month-old baby. Twice in the morning. What gets me up in the morning is starting my day is the quickest way to, is the most efficient way of just scratching the itch. Filmmakers will know this, you know, the vision is so simple and the journey is so complicated, and the work never stops. There's always a million and one things to do, but the ultimate kind of drive is a total inner inner calling, and the day starts when you just turn up and sort of start facing it. And for me, that's not a case of like a morning routine and then sitting at my desk. It comes as soon as I wake up. It's like the drop down menu of stuff to do, sort of cascades, and it's exhausting, but it's also fun. And I just think, what else are you meant to do with this life?
How do you feel when you finished a film?
I normally get quite ill after I finish a film, because I've been running on some form of adrenaline, and then my body takes over. So I feel totally exhausted and probably kind of blue, because it's the kind of that thrill is over. But yeah, every time I finished a project, I kind of am slightly left in pieces and feel, never doing that again. And then bam, the next idea comes and you just think, oh yeah, sure, I'll just do that. It's bonkers. Yeah. But I'm also very much at the start of my career, and so my experience of finishing a film is full, in the sense that it's a micro example of hopefully one day what it will be. But I am looking forward to knowing that feeling on larger, feature length scales as well. Yeah, don't know why, then I'll be really tired, but there's the fulfillment of a feature is something that I am thirsty for sure.
What picks you up when you're feeling down?
Honestly, nothing picks me up when I'm feeling down. I have to wait. I have been in that position enough times to know that just as feeling down is a kind of involuntary position, some almost emotional gust of wind comes along and picks you back up, and I can try to do things that would make me happy, but it's superficial stuff, and what will pick me back up will be some inner thing that is kind of unconscious, and I'm not in control of that. So patience eventually will get me there.
Can you acknowledge, can you recognize the signs of when you are in that funk? Like you're like, okay, I know what's happening. Like, this is my kind of protocol.
Yes, I can normally read it on other people's eyes.
Do you watch your own work when it's being screened?
Yes.
And you're okay with watching your own work? Yeah,
absolutely. I've spent a year watching it on a tiny screen. I want to see it on a big screen and hear how people react. It's like, it's so rare. And also it's done, it's like, it's not a live performance. It's great to kind of hear what plays.
Do your parents understand what you do as a job?
Yes, they do. I'm very lucky. They totally understand, and even sometimes get roped into projects, which I've been doing since I was 4. So, they're parents / long-term collaborators.
If you were not working in film, what would you be doing instead?
If I wasn't working in film, probably would be working in photography. I'd probably be fluctuating in an identity crisis between photography and music.
What did you play?
I played guitar and wrote songs, and recorded 2 albums in Brazil with a bunch of incredible musicians who are far more talented than me, but with an amazing producer called Diogo Strausz, who I often collaborate with on, composition for my films. And yeah, it was just that making those 2 albums was just some of the best times in my life. It was wild. I pretended to be, a real life musician for some periods of time, and it was just amazing, really, and so similar to filmmaking. It's ridiculous.
Do you still play?
Not for a long time. I never enjoyed playing live, but I haven't written for a long time. Um, One day, maybe I will. I I really love writing and recording. I really love it.
Do you collect anything?
I'm in the process of uncollecting things. Uh, so I used to. Collecting is for the young and the old, and I'm currently somewhere in the middle.
What are you uncollecting right now?
A ridiculous postcard collection that I started when I was a kid. I had thousands of postcards, and yeah, they're now on to better lives.
And were they ones that you kind of posted to yourself, or just ones that you bought and they were kind of clean and fresh?
Yeah, bought or I mean, people who knew me bought me postcards, so I just had this kind of they didn't have writing on them. That would have been way better if they were actual stories. Then it would have been great. You could pick a postcard out of the bag and write a film from it. But no, it was more about the graphics on the postcard. I liked them, but yeah, they weren't doing me any favors in life, so they had to go.
I studied in Bournemouth, and there was a bar there called 60,000 Postcards.
I remember it. I also went to Bournemouth.
Yeah. I think it was 60,000.
I think it was 60 million
Yeah,
actually.
60 million. Yeah. And it was obviously like, it was quite a hip bar back in the
Yeah.
day. But yeah, and I just remember thinking like it still exists, that kind of traditional form of communication, and it's like a pretty telegram basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I still like, whenever, because obviously we go to a lot of film festivals around the world, and there is that still that kind of sense of like collecting something from places you've been physically, like whether it be a magnet or a sticker or a postcard, and I still love seeing those postcards.
Yeah.
Which of the five senses is your strongest?
I think that the relationship that I find between sight and hearing, sight and sound, good name for a magazine, they play off of each other. There's such a visually, and it's because of my background in photography, specifically in street photography, which is all about playing the frame and not just having something in the middle, but it very much works in a kind of classical sense of composition, and as in visually classical, not musically classical. But anyway, there is such a musicality to those compositions, and the way that I am starting to realize the way that I experience life is I so analyze visually things in frames, because I spent so much time taking pictures of things. I find natural frames totally unconsciously. It's just the way that I see things, not good or bad. It's just how it is. But then also with sound, I also am able to deconstruct the different layers of what's going on and almost tune certain things up or down in the way that you would expose a shot for shadows or highlights or whatever, and kind of doing a live mix on my visual and audio senses is something that I'm starting to realize is something that I've done for years, and is so much about the manipulating of different elements that you have in a film, right? There are things that you shoot or turn up or down to emphasize a particular part of storytelling, and we do it in conversations. You're in a cafe and you naturally drown out all of the sound so that you can focus on the other person. But I've realized that I do that a lot in my day-to-day, and the combination of those things gives me a strong sense of like mood-driven storytelling, and that sense of place. The combination of those things gives me such a strong sense of place, and I love that. I'm very happy with that. I don't need anything else. So that's a long, pretentious answer, but that's basically how I feel. And taste, I just love pizza, so I don't need anything else apart from that.
I don't think I trust anyone who doesn't like pizza, because it's like a classic staple for anyone. Like,
yeah, you gotta watch those people.
Yeah, don't trust them.